Hey everyone, we'll be talking about how to manage state inside an Ionic application using behavior subjects in this video. To start off, let's create a fresh new Ionic project and we can start from there. To create a new Ionic project, to create a new Ionic application, I'll use Ionic start and we'll call it state management application. I'll choose Angular and I'll choose the blank starter project. Now that our Ionic application is set up, we'll move inside the folder that got created. Over here, let's take a look at the application. Over here, to start off with state management, you always want to store application state inside a service. To do this, let's write Ionic generate service and we'll call this state. Now I gave a generic name as state, but normally every service should be dedicated to what one kind of data that you store. Take for example, if you store data about tasks in your application, then your service name should be tasks and will store data about it inside this service. Before we go into how to use behavior subject, let's look at a small JavaScript example and understand how behavior subjects works under the hood. So first, let me show you the reason why we need a behavior subject. Suppose in a page, you had a variable called employee. Let's say const employee. And this employee has maybe a few properties, maybe say name, say John, he has age, maybe say 30. Now, you also have another property which you store, which is let is employee senior. We have this variable is employee senior, and this gets set every time the current employee that is selected is age over 50. So John over here in this given page has age 30, so he's not senior. But maybe you press some button on the screen, you update the employee. Now, let's say employee gets set to a different person and we'll call him Sam. Now, Sam age is 55. Now that I've updated the employee variable, I have to update this again to true. Or I update this with a condition that is employee age greater than 50. Now, if I put this inside a method, I have to call this every time employee gets updated. If there are many dependencies on employee, I have to update this, call this method every single time. How do I make this easier? Now, the way you do that in JavaScript is by using something called a reactive object. Let's declare a reactive object and we can see how that works. Reactive object, and we pass something called initial value, and we return an object which has the value inside initial value. We have an array of watchers. We have a method called addWatcher. What addWatcher does, it just adds a function to the array of watchers. This dot watchers dot push watcher function, and last is update value. Now, this is an interesting way of creating values. Now see, if I instead of setting employee as variables and updating is employee senior every time you update this variable, now what I can do is let's use this reactive object to create the same employee example. Let's say let new employee equal to reactive object, and I just pass in null. This is the initial setup for the reactive object. Now new employee dot, I'll add a watcher right now, and I'll add employee. Now let's create the variable let is employee senior new equal to false, because this is not set yet. We'll do is employee senior new equal to employee dot age. Now every time I set something to new employee, I don't have to worry about whether this particular variable is updated or not. It will get automatically updated, right? Because anytime I update this watcher is called and this value is set. This is the benefit you get from any kind of reactive object. Behavior subject essentially works in the same way. Suppose I create a variable here called employee dollar, and I set it to a behavior subject. Since employee class is not defined, I'll just add it over here. Type employee equal to name string age number. And I'll also import behavior subject. Now employee, this can also be set to null. So let me just also define that. I can now have other kinds of variables here. We get is employee senior and return as return this dot employee, not like this, my bad. Employee dot pipe. I add the map operator. Employee age greater than 50. Similarly, anytime I update employee, I can basically set it through a method. Basically, this method which would update this behavior subject. Now, throughout the application, this variable can be accessed through anywhere, right? So, but always make sure that your behavior subject is accessed through methods. Otherwise, the problem that you'll run into is anytime the model of this value inside behavior subject gets updated, all of the places where you use use the methods will get affected. You can if you decouple the usage of this behavior subject throughout the application, you get the benefit that this model can vary without affecting the rest of the application. So always make sure that anytime you're accessing the variable, you always access it through methods. You do not access this directly. To do this, you can always use the private keyword. Now, if I wanted to say employee inside maybe say homepage, what I'll do is, first of all, I'll go to the constructor, private state service. I'll import this. After that, I'll create a variable over here, employee dollar. I'll just declare the data type over here, observable, employee null. Let me import this. I'll skip importing the employee. Ideally, we should be importing it over here. And I'll set it inside the constructor. This dot employee, state service, get employee. Now, inside the application, when inside this page, I can subscribe to this dot employee and get the corresponding employee values at any point of time I want. One thing to note, whenever returning the employee, always make sure that you return it as an observable. You don't return the behavior subject directly. Otherwise, you expose the behavior subject outside, and anyone who uses this would be able to set this value externally. We should not be allowing that. To set the value, always it should go through update employee. For the same reason I called out, this decoupling is very necessary to make sure that your application behaves properly. This is how you should be using behavior subject inside your Ionic application to store your application state. This behavior subject would suffice for most state management problems that you come across. Use it well. Use it in communication with RxJS operators to make more sense out of it. Most cases, your application state requirements would be sufficed by creating state variables directly inside your pages. Thank you.